Greetings, Trekkies, Trekkers, Blerds, and Nerds. Welcome back to Scene and Nerd Presents Blerd Trek, the show where one Blerd breaks down the final frontier one episode at a time. I'm Will, and today we're talking about Strange New Worlds, Season 4, Episode 3, Human Best Friend. Grab a drink, preferably not one, from Cessnar Grand, and let's get to it. Now, right off the top, your mileage is going to vary hard with this one. This is a swing for the fences episode, and depending on which character thread you land on, you're either going to love it or you're going to be checking your watch. For me, there's a lot that's genuinely worked for me in this episode, and a couple things that were just okay, and a couple things that just flat out didn't land. Let's break it all down. Now first, what worked for me? And what really worked for me well was Scotty and Ortegas finally sitting down, or honestly stumbling down, getting to the actual root of why they pick her. This tension has been simmering for a while now, and this episode is the one that finally cracks it open. Now what I love is that Scotty stays rough around the edges. He's still cranky, still a little bit of a hothead, but you can feel him growing into the guy we meet in the original series. Still difficult, but a team player when it counts. And that's a hard needle to thread, and this episode threads it. And Ortegas gets the long character treatment too. She is a new character in this universe, so the writers aren't boxed in by 60 years of canon telling them who she is and who she has to be. That freedom is doing a lot of heavy lifting here because it works, and I hope they could keep leaning into it. Now, everybody's comparing this episode to The Hangover, and that's a fair comparison because at the structural level, it is. You wake up, you have no memory, and you piece together the night. But to me, if you want another comparison, I'm going to go with Lethal Weapon. In that movie, you had Riggs and Murtaugh, two people who start out ready to strangle each other because their styles don't match. They're thrown together, and it's not until they actually get into it that you find out the friction was never really about the job. It's about Murtaugh, steady, about to retire family life, running head on into Riggs' grief. And we have a similar dynamic here, where Scotty's alert system reads to Ortegas like a referendum on whether she's actually good enough behind the helm, and her blowing through his warnings reads to Scotty like she doesn't respect what it takes to keep that ship flying. Neither one of them's really mad about the duct tape console. They're mad about what it says about them, and they explore their backgrounds as far as why they reacted the way they do. And that's Scotty and Ortegas in this episode, almost beat for beat. Now, if you want a more comedic register, I would throw in Rush Hour as another example. Carter and Lee spend the first act openly hating working together. Different styles, different instincts, constantly stepping on each other, and the movie makes you sit in that friction before it lets them earn each other's respect. And that's the same shape as Scotty and Ortegas here. Let the bickering breathe this season before the payoff. Now, the second thing that worked for me in this episode is, and honestly what might be my favorite thing, is the Kirk and Spock dynamic and how these two became friends. The writers play this so smart because Spock spends the entire episode convinced that Kirk is a hallucination. I love the line where he's like, "The hallucination, be gone." But just as it's just a byproduct of this planet's intoxicating atmosphere loosening up his mind. So he lets his guard all the way down, saying things he would never say sober or never say to a stranger. And that's such an effective use of show, don't tell. You get to see who Spock actually is underneath the logic, without the show having to spell it out for you in dialogue. And then there's the moment he finds out Kirk was really there the whole time. That look on his face, genuine shock, genuine surprise, it's earned. It only works because of everything that came before it. I have to shout out Ethan Peck and Paul Wesley here because their chemistry is completely natural. It reminds me of Shatner and Nimoy. And I'll even go further. It hits harder than Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto from the Kelvin films, because that dynamic actually plays closer to what we're seeing with Scotty and Ortegas. Friction first, friendship second. Peck and Wesley feel like they already have the shorthand of old friends. Now, there's also a small bonus deep cut for fans. The title itself is doing the work. Human Best Friend is Spock reaching for an English phrase to translate something Vulcan doesn't have an equivalent word for, which is very on brand for how this show has been handling the Kirk-Spock bond all season. And can't we just talk about Spock's running bit of looking at Scotty and Ortegas at seeing those plants. Small joke, but it landed every single time it came back to it. Now, let me move to my mixed feelings. And this one, for me, is genuinely hard to pin down because Celia Rose Gooding and Anson Mount both have real comedic chops, and this episode absolutely lets them show it off. I laughed at the moments they had, but something about how Uhura and Pike were used here just didn't fully work for me. I can't put my finger exactly on what it is. The jokes land, performances are good, it's more like the material around them just didn't carry the same weight as everything else going on in this episode. But I will have to give a quick shout out to the use of Dr. Mbenga as the bartender. And it's a small part of the episode, but a good one. And Mbenga getting to use the line, quote unquote, "it's green," is another one of those winks to the audience about something we know that's going to come in the original series. Little moments like that is exactly why I keep watching this show super closely. Now, and also we got a reference to The Next Generation as well with that same line. Now, what didn't work for me, and that has to be La'an and Chapel. Both of these threads took me completely out of the episode. I am tired of the whole augment storyline. We've been here, we've done this beat before, and I have to say, as far as Chapel, being in a room of old ladies and space bingo just felt a little contrived. Like the writers needed to give her anything to do in this episode. So that's just me. Let me know your thoughts. Okay, now for the moment I know some of you clicked on this video for, and what are my thoughts of Una's Klingon cover of Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart. Quick thing before I get to that though, just a quick RIP to Bonnie Tyler. We lost her this year, and it means a little more watching her biggest song get this kind of lovingly ridiculous send-up on screen. Now, getting back to the episode, if you think you've experienced karaoke, but you have not experienced karaoke until you've heard number one belt out an 80s power ballad in the Klingon tongue. It is totally given the Chang Star Trek Undiscovered Country vibes of if you haven't really experienced Shakespeare until you read him in the original Klingon Bonnie Tyler edition. I Will Die on This Hill. Somebody give Rebecca Romaine a full Klingon album. But I do have to be honest, even with all that, in the moment, the scene did take me out a little bit. Did not know what to do with what I was watching at that time. But I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did, because it actually lands as this ridiculous, earnest, very Star Trek needle drop. And I have to say that energy continues into the back half of the episode, where the crew does discover that there's a bomb involved, and Pike's insults to the delegation from earlier in the episode end up being the exact thing that helps everybody work their way through this crisis. And that's such a Star Trek move, turning conflict into the tool that saves the day, instead of conflict for just conflict's sake. And also, just a quick little detail, one I had to note, Scotty nearly loses a finger in this episode, and the writers, whether they meant it or not, was a little sneaky homage to James Doohan, who was the actor who played the original Scotty, who actually lost a part of his right middle finger in World War II. And he spent the rest of his career hiding it on camera. If you look at some of the episodes in the original series, you probably always notice that James Doohan held his hands kind of funny. But even if it is a coincidence, having this Scotty almost lose a finger defusing a bomb is exactly the kind of quiet nod this show does so well. But there is one story note here that I did want to touch on, and it has to do with if to me it would work. That scene would have worked better if it had been Ortegas who ends up with the bomb and not Scotty, because Scotty has so much plot armor, so much canon armor. We know he's going to make it to the original series, so you know from the moment he got that bomb, he was never in real danger. Ortegas' story, though, doesn't have that kind of plot safety net, and she's new, and the stakes would have felt more real in that moment if she had that bomb. And that's not anything that I'm wishing for her demise. She's literally on the wall of honor at Starfleet Academy, and I'm not asking for them to kill or take us off or anything like that, but it would at least given the scene more weight if that had been the case. So overall, like I said, this is a mileage may vary episode. There is a moment with Una singing that did take me out of it, as well as the other ones I mentioned, but I'm glad I stayed for the ride, because the character work they gave Scotty, Ortegas, Spock, and Kirk is probably some of the best they've done this season. And this so far, it's messy, it's silly, but it mostly works. But that's going to do it for this breakdown of Human Best Friend. What did you think? Did Una's Klingon Ballad work for you, or did it completely lose you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them. If this is the kind of breakdown you're here for, smash that like button, subscribe to Seen a Nerd, and hit that bell so you never miss the next Blerd trick or our main show. Until next time, live long and prosper. Nerd out.